Hey, Happy New Year, Peacemakers. It's Lily, your host. Happy 2022. Guess what? We're second year in. Wow, I can't believe this. So I started my podcast exactly a year ago, and what a crazy journey it's been. Ever since starting the podcast during the pandemic, my life has taken on such an interesting turn. I've learned so much about climate solutions, plant-based lifestyles, and I've made so many close friends and professional connections. I met so many wonderful people who have inspired me with their stories and experiences, who are generous enough to impart their knowledge and insights to me. So I just want to say thank you, Peacemaker, yes, you, for tuning in and supporting my podcast. And I want to give a big shout out to all the guests who have been on my podcast. And I want to thank all my friends and family for their support. Thank you all. I could not do this without you. Also, as an aside, I want to give a big shout out to my close friend Eliza, who recently gifted me a beautiful custom-made cutting board with Make Peace Not Beef's logo engraved on it as my Christmas present. And it is the cutest thing ever, I swear to God. In fact, it's so unbelievably gorgeous that I'll probably never use it for cutting. I was thinking maybe I could use it as a vegan charcuterie board whenever I host a party in the future, because it's so pretty. I don't want to cut on it. So thank you so much, Eliza, for such a thoughtful gift. And if you guys want to go see a picture of the cutting board, just head over to my personal Instagram at LilyTong, that's spelled LILLY.TONG. So I actually made a post about it, so go check it out. Now, to kick off the new year and to celebrate Veganuary, yes, I said Veganuary. Apparently, it's like Vegan January. It's a thing that someone in the UK started, I believe. I actually don't know the full story behind it. But anyway, so today, I actually kind of want to go back to the basics and demystify veganism and really talk about what is veganism and what is not veganism, and also which products are vegan and which ones aren't, including both food products as well as non-food products, ranging from beauty to skincare to clothing. By the way, this is not intuitive at all. I had to take time to learn about all of this too because I didn't know either. And sometimes I would see a product labeled vegan and I'd be like, what? But how can wine be non-vegan? Like a lot of the products just don't make sense. I'm like, how can this thing be not vegan? So we're gonna address all of that today. Lots of good stuff. But first of all, let's talk about what is veganism exactly. Well, veganism is a way of life that focuses on minimizing animal cruelty and exploitation. And as a result, it translates into a diet that excludes any animal products and derivatives, including meat, seafood, dairy, eggs, cheese, butter, honey, and also more obscure things like gelatin, casein, confectioner's glaze, traces of which can be found in almost anything from yogurt to gummy bears to chips. And different from vegetarianism, which I get asked this question a lot, like what is the difference between vegetarianism and veganism? So vegetarianism is more of a diet that excludes only meat and seafood, whereas veganism imposes a stricter diet that excludes all animal products. But also more importantly, it's more of a philosophy and a way of life as opposed to just dietary restrictions. And to be honest, I think most vegans don't even have an exhaustive list of everything that is not vegan. And for that reason, I keep emphasizing that no vegan is perfect, and chasing perfectionism is not the point of veganism. Now, why does a diet devoid of animal products minimize cruelty? Because of the way modern animal agriculture works, which I've covered in previous episodes, and you can go back and check out episode 2 on my podcast, which I talk about why I became a vegan, for more information on the dairy industry. Of course, nowadays, more and more people are adopting a vegan diet for a variety of reasons, for ethical, health, and environmental reasons. And as we learn about the horrendous ways in which animals are abused in factory farms, the astronomical environmental damage of cattle farming, both in terms of methane emissions, water use, and deforestation. Sorry, I shouldn't use the word both because that's 3 things. And then there's health risks, right, associated with long-term consumption of red meat and seafood. So there's plenty of reasons to go vegan. And definitely the trend to go vegan is on the rise. But the most stringent form of veganism actually extends the practice beyond diet and into other areas of life as well. So, these vegans would only buy from vegan clothing brands, skincare products, lifestyle brands, and other products because surprisingly, a large number of products contain animal derivatives, believe it or not. And yes, we will get into all of that today. Like, how can skincare products contain animal derivatives, right? But before I dive into which products are vegan and which ones are not, I want to first reiterate my views on veganism, which has somewhat evolved over time, which by now probably deviates somewhat from the standard view on veganism. Now, personally, as I've stated on a recent previous episode, back in episode 43, I'm still vegan, but I do the best that I can. But I am by no means a perfect and stringent vegan, so I still consume products that are not fully vegan, either intentionally because I don't want to waste food or fight over minutiae, or unintentionally because I don't know it's not vegan. And in fact, I stated that I still have a leather jacket from a few years ago, and I still wear it because I think it's better to use it at this point than to let it rot in a landfill when it still has residual value, right? And you can't revive the dead cow from the leather anyway. I know there are many vegans that would take the time to research every brand and read every label before they purchase a product, and I have tremendous respect for them. But for me, I think the intention matters more than the precision of the practice, and being an imperfect vegan is my way of preserving the longevity of my vegan lifestyle, because I know so many vegans who eventually bowed out of veganism due to the immense pressure of maintaining the level of stringency. So personally, I'd rather relax the rules a little bit, but still be able to sustain my vegan lifestyle over a longer period of time. But of course, that's my personal opinion, and maybe a controversial one that can be interpreted as a sign of laziness or loose conduct. But I think the most important thing is for us vegans to support and educate one another, instead of policing one another on the level of stringency and be like, oh my gosh, did you not ask the barista to remove the honey drizzle on your caramel latte at Starbucks? And personally, I'm a champion of individual freedom. So I think it should be up to each vegan to decide the level of stringency in their personal commitment to veganism, and it shouldn't make them more or less of a vegan if they ever make a mistake or decide to break a rule for whatever reasons. I think we have to respect that vegans all come from different cultural backgrounds and socioeconomic statuses, and while we all give it our best attempt, there are going to be times where we might choose practicality over strict adherence to veganism. And I think on a human level, that's fine, and this is something I've come to terms with. I think that kind of tolerance is the only way that we can get more people on board with going plant-based. Now, once again, before we're vegans, we're all just humans trying to do better for the animals and the environment. And no human is perfect. We all make mistakes in all areas of life. And that's why no one has ever gotten 100% on every single test we've taken. So, recognizing humanity as our common denominator is what's going to strengthen our cause, as opposed to turning veganism into an elite cult. But once again, that's my personal opinion, so of course, feel free to agree or disagree with me. So with that in mind, let's talk about which food products are surprisingly not vegan. So obviously, fruits and vegetables are vegan, right? But which food products are not vegan? Well, number one, is honey vegan? The answer is no. So honey is made by honeybees that turn nectar from flowering plants from complex sugars into simple sugars, and they store it in their hives for the winter, right, during hibernation as an energy source. But nowadays, honey is derived from bees that are mass-bred and kept in captivity and exploited. So honey collection actually disturbs the bee community and their livelihood, and sometimes farmers would actually clip the wings of queen bees to prevent them from leaving with their swarm. And this affects their fertility and egg-laying ability in the long run. Believe it or not, bees are actually vital to our food security. Roughly 1 in 3 mouthfuls of food comes from pollination due to honeybees, so maintaining bee population and diversity is crucial to our ecosystem. But because of human intervention, bee populations are now dwindling at a rapid rate. They're sharply declining. For that reason, vegans avoid honey consumption. So what are some vegan substitutes for honey, you ask? Well, there's maple syrup and there's agave, and you can also just use brown sugar. And mix it with some water maybe. Next, what about gelatin? So gelatin is this substance that is commonly found in jello, gummy bears, chewy candies, yogurts, ice creams, and even soft drinks as a thickening agent, right? It's like this translucent thickening gel. So gelatin is a protein that is derived from connective tissues in bones and ligaments and skins of animals, usually cows and pigs. And it's usually obtained by boiling the skin and ligaments. So anything that contains gelatin is not vegan by the definition because it is an animal derivative. Now, believe it or not, I recently drank a bottle of wine that turned out to be not vegan. Like, what the heck? Who would have thought that wine, out of all things, can be non-vegan? Well, it turns out that many wines actually contain what's called isinglass, which is used as a clarifying agent in beers and alcohols that is actually derived from fish bladder. Blah. Gross. So yeah, surprisingly, a lot of alcohols that contain isinglass are not vegan. I know, who would have thought? I would have never known that until recently. And lastly, white sugar, believe it or not, is actually not vegan. I know, this list is getting crazier. Well, this is because white sugar is refined and the filtration process uses animal bone char. And then there's also other non-vegan ingredients like whey, right? WHEY, and casein, which is another milk byproduct, found in many products that are not vegan. And if you like Asian food, this part might disappoint you because a lot of kimchi and miso products may or may not be vegan because kimchi may contain fish sauce and miso may be made using dashi, which is a Japanese fish stock. So check the labels if you want to buy vegan versions of these. And guess what? This sounds absolutely wild, but I found out that McDonald's fries in the United States is apparently not vegan because they contain beef fat. What? Seriously, right? So at this point, what is vegan? Like the ketchup? And yes, of course, you know I'm gonna say some ketchup brands are not vegan either. But hey, personally, this is where I decide to draw the line, right? I'm not that picky to that extent. Like if it contains traces of this thing, personally for me, I'm not gonna bother. But I know many vegans who would absolutely abstain from any of these byproducts. But hey, it's good to have this knowledge, so now you know that you can make better choices. Now, let's talk about a few food items that are a little bit more debatable, like avocados and figs. Yes, I said avocados and figs. And you probably see these two ingredients in vegan recipes all the time. So why is avocado debatable? Well, because once again, it involves the use of commercial migratory beekeeping. So remember that whole spiel I gave about bee exploitation earlier. Yeah, so growing avocados involves intervening bee populations because once again, we need it for pollination. And then there's the controversy with figs, which is even more interesting, which involves the death of wasps in the pollination process, because there's actually a symbiotic relationship between the reproductive cycle of wasps and figs. And some people argue that figs are not vegan because of this, and some figs may contain traces of dead wasps. Yeah, not the most pleasant to picture when you're eating figs, but... And I haven't even talked about the negative environmental impact of avocado monocultures yet. But again, like I said, everything in this world is so interwoven, and it's hard to be a vegan in the strictest sense. This actually reminds me of that episode from The Good Place. I'm not sure if you've seen that show. It's an excellent show. You should totally watch it. But spoiler alert. Basically, in one episode of The Good Place, the characters learn that no human has gotten into the good place in the past 521 years because the world has gotten so complex that even the best intentions sometimes result in negative, unintended consequences. So now we're caught in this moral dilemma. And my take on this is this. Well, life is short. Eat your avocados, indulge in it from time to time, but have it in moderation and be sure to look into where it's from so you can better understand the impact of your consumption. Okay, so those are the basic food items that I've addressed and some of the common myths and misconceptions about what's vegan and what's not. Next, let's talk about non-food products that may not be vegan. Okay, so this part is a lot less intuitive because most people associate veganism with the diet and not the lifestyle. But in reality, there's many non-food products that contain animal derivatives. Well, first of all, let's look at clothing. Which materials are not vegan? So leather is not vegan because leather is basically the skin of animals, right? Ranging from cows to sheep to pigs. Also, wool, fur, silk, and suede are also not vegan. The production of wool actually involves a staggering degree of cruelty. And fur is not vegan because, well, obviously it is derived from the animal's skin. And more than 100 million animals are killed for their fur every year worldwide, including dogs and cats, rabbits, coyotes, beavers, and bobcats. It's crazy. So silk is not vegan because, well, silkworms are either boiled or gassed alive while still in their cocoons. Yes, very cruel. And suede is made out of lambskin, so it's definitely not vegan. So then what is vegan then, you ask? Which textiles are vegan? So, basically cotton, denim, hemp, linen, and many other materials are all vegan. So you're fine with those choices. Now, what about jewelry? Yes, I said jewelry. This part is gonna sound a little bit crazy to you, but some people would argue that gold is not vegan because gold mines impact wildlife. And pearls are apparently also deemed non-vegan by some critics due to its extraction process from mollusks while they're still alive in their shells. Are gold and pearls vegan? It's debatable if we're arguing from an ethical standpoint. But like I said, we live in an incredibly complex world, and it's up to each vegan to draw the line where they feel comfortable. Personally, I'm going for the carbon capture diamonds. Okay, next, let's talk about beauty and skincare products, which is commonly used and discussed. How can these products be non-vegan? Well, many beauty products are not vegan because they either involve animal testing or contain animal-derived products such as beeswax, honey, milk, carmine, or cochineal, collagen, elastin, and keratin. Hence, you will notice that some brands will explicitly claim that they are a cruelty-free or vegan brand, or both. By the way, cruelty-free and vegan are not necessarily the same thing. Cruelty-free means they haven't tested on animals, and vegan means they don't contain any animal byproducts or derivatives. And why is animal testing required for most cosmetics anyway, right? Because these brands want to test for toxicity, dermal penetration, efficacy, skin irritation, and also allergic reactions before they launch the product and sell it to the masses. But thankfully, with advances in technology, we can now conduct cosmetic testing on artificial human skin, and also using lab-grown tissues to transition into a cruelty-free world of cosmetics. So the good news is that almost 40 countries around the world have either banned or limited the use of animal testing in cosmetics. So if you're someone who really cares about animal welfare and you want to minimize animal cruelty, be sure to opt for cosmetic products that are cruelty-free and vegan. Lastly, I want to talk about a more obscure category, which is cleaning products. Are cleaning products vegan? I mean, there's definitely no cheese and butter and definitely no chicken nuggets floating around in them, so they've got to be vegan, right? My mind was blown when I found out that Tide is not vegan. And I've been using Tide for years. In fact, I still use it. Who on earth would have thought that Tide is not vegan? Like, what's in it? Chicken stock? Just goes to show you that I'm not a perfect vegan, right? But if we're talking about the strict definition of veganism, a lot of cleaning products are technically not vegan. Let's take a look. So many fabric softeners and conditioners contain animal-derived fats, including tallow and stearic acid. And laundry detergents contain lard and sometimes glycerin and lanolin, which are all animal derivatives, on top of most of these brands conducting some level of animal testing, so they're not cruelty-free either, nor are they vegan. Although, if you read the labels carefully, you will find that many brands nowadays are explicitly labeled vegan and cruelty-free, so you can go for those ones if you want to minimize animal cruelty. And if you want to extend the discussion to furnitures, then many sofas are obviously not vegan because of their use of leather, and etc. So at this point, you're probably wondering, well, Lily, what is vegan then? Is my iPhone vegan? And guess what? That is not a stupid question. So I own an iPhone, and I was shocked to discover this. But most smartphones actually do involve exploitation of humans and animals on some levels. So technically, they're not vegan. Yes, I just said so. Your iPhone is probably not vegan. us vegans talk about animal exploitation all the time, but what about humans, right? So the batteries in my iPhone requires cobalt, which is probably mined by some 5-year-old Congolese child in precarious conditions and is treated poorly and underpaid. What about cars? Are cars vegan? Well, technically, most cars are not vegan because of leather seeds and also rubber production that involve the use of animal fats. So now we're caught in a serious moral dilemma. To live or not to live? That is the question. So long as we live, we will incur some sort of damage or negative impact on this planet, either on animals or the environment. Having said all of that, the ultimate goal, I think, is not to completely eliminate our impact on animals and the environment, but to minimize it. I still use plastic. I still consume non-vegan products from time to time, and as much as I want to avoid all of it, sometimes it's unavoidable because there are no viable alternatives. It's impossible to eliminate our negative impact altogether because we live in an imperfect world, and thus the products we consume come from imperfect sources and unfortunately involve undesirable means. But that doesn't give us an excuse not to do the best that we can and push for positive changes in our society. It's not an all or nothing thing, and that's the one thing I want to emphasize in this episode. And I encourage every one of us to do the best that we can when it comes to our diet and lifestyle choices. Speaking of, I mentioned this earlier, but if you haven't seen the TV show The Good Place, be sure to check it out. It's an excellent show that really explores this concept of what's good versus evil. But it's also just a hilarious TV show, and it's one of my favorite shows to watch at night before I go to bed. By the way, Eleanor Shellstrop is one of my favorite TV show characters of all time, hands down. So go watch The Good Place, it's on Netflix, and tell me what you think of it. Anyway, that wraps up today's episode, where I talked about what veganism is and which products are vegan and which products are not. I hope that gives you a better understanding of the vegan lifestyle and helps you make better choices in your day-to-day life. But to conclude, I want to wish everyone a very happy new year. I wish the new year brings you health, prosperity, happiness, and success. And stay safe during Omicron. Happy New Year, everyone, and happy Veganuary. I'll see you in the next episode.